Admiral Jake Morrison stood at the observation deck of Nexus Prime, watching the stars beyond the massive space station. The meeting had ended an hour ago, but his mind was still processing what had happened. 47 years of peace and cooperation with the Galactic Council, and now this. Dr. Lisa Carter walked up beside him, her face showing the same shock he felt. "Jake, we need to talk about what they said in there." Morrison nodded slowly. The council chamber had been full of alien representatives from across the galaxy. The Zephyrians with their blue skin and silver eyes, the Corvani with their massive frames and deep voices, the ethereal collective, beings of pure energy who spoke directly into minds. All of them had voted together for the first time in decades. 60% of our fleet, Morrison said quietly. They want us to hand over 60% of our ships and abandon 12 colonies, Carter added. Worlds where 3 million humans live, worlds they've called home for generations. The ultimatum had been delivered by High Counselor Vextar of the Zephyrians. His voice had been calm, almost gentle, as he explained the new requirements for humanity's continued membership in the Council. The humans had 30 days to comply or face complete isolation from galactic trade and possible military action. Morrison thought back to when humanity first joined the Council. Earth had been so excited to meet other intelligent species. Humans had worked hard to prove themselves worthy of membership. They shared their medical knowledge, helping cure diseases that had plagued alien worlds for centuries. Human engineers had designed better, faster-than-light drives. Human diplomats had helped resolve conflicts between species that had fought for generations. "They're afraid of us," Carter said, breaking the silence. "What makes you say that?" "The way Vextar spoke, the way they all looked at us. This isn't about galactic stability like they claimed. They're scared of what we might become." Morrison had noticed it too. The Council had always treated humanity as the newcomers, the young species that needed guidance. But in recent years, human colonies were expanding faster than anyone expected. Human technology was advancing at rates that made the elder races uncomfortable. Human ships were being built with innovations that even the Corvani military couldn't match, sir, a voice called from behind them. Captain Ryan Brooks approached, his face grim. "We just received a priority message from Earth. The President wants to speak with you immediately." Morrison and Carter followed Brooks to the communication center. The holographic image of President Helen Murphy appeared, her expression serious. "Admiral, I've been briefed on the Council's demands. What's your assessment?" Morrison chose his words carefully. "Madam President, if we comply with these demands, humanity will effectively become a client state. We'll lose our independence and our ability to defend ourselves. And if we refuse, war against forces that outnumber us 50 to 1. President Murphy was quiet for a moment. "What about our allies? The Centauri Republic? The Andromedans?" "They've already indicated they'll support the Council's decision," Carter said. "They're afraid of being next if they stand with us." The communication ended with President Murphy promising to call an emergency session of the United Earth Assembly. Morrison and his team prepared to return to Earth, but first they had to deal with an immediate problem. Maria Santos, the intelligence director, had been monitoring Council communications. She approached Morrison with a datapad, her face pale. "Admiral, we've intercepted something disturbing. The Council has been discussing what they call the human problem for over a year. This ultimatum isn't a sudden decision. It's been planned." Morrison read the translated communications Santos had gathered. The Council's elder races had been meeting in secret, discussing how to limit human expansion before it became uncontrollable. They had studied human history, particularly the rapid technological advancement and territorial expansion that had characterized human civilization. "They're not just afraid of our military," Santos continued. "They're afraid of our ideas. Human concepts of individual rights, democratic government, and technological innovation are spreading to other species. Some of the younger Council members have been asking why their own species can't have the same freedoms humans enjoy." The pieces were falling into place. The Council wasn't just trying to limit human power. They were trying to preserve their own system of control, where elder races made decisions for younger ones, where innovation was controlled and regulated, where species stayed in their assigned roles. Back on Earth, the debates had already begun. The United Earth Assembly was divided. Some representatives argued for compliance, saying that war against the entire galaxy was suicide. Others demanded resistance, claiming that freedom was worth any price. Morrison met with his senior staff. In the Pentagon's secure briefing room, the holographic star map showed human space. Dozens of worlds, hundreds of ships, millions of lives that depended on the decisions made in this room. What are our actual capabilities? Morrison asked his fleet commanders. The answers weren't encouraging. Humanity had a strong fleet, but it was designed for exploration and peacekeeping, not total war. Human ships were fast and well-armed, but they were vastly outnumbered by the combined fleets of the Council. "We have one advantage," said Dr. Ben Rogers, the head of weapons research, Project Prometheus. "The Council doesn't know about it." Morrison had authorized Project Prometheus 3 years ago, after intelligence suggested that not all species had joined the Council voluntarily. The project had been developing advanced weapons based on technology found in ancient ruins in human space, combined with human innovations in artificial intelligence and quantum mechanics. "How advanced is it?" Morrison asked. "The prototypes are ready. We could have the first operational units within weeks." The meeting ended with Morrison authorizing the secret mobilization of reserve fleets and the acceleration of Project Prometheus. Officially, humanity was still considering the Council's ultimatum. Unofficially, they were preparing for war. Morrison returned to his quarters that night. He thought about the choice facing humanity: surrender their independence and accept permanent subjugation, or fight against impossible odds for the right to determine their own future. The Council had drawn a line in space, demanding that humanity stay within the boundaries they had set. But Morrison knew something the Council didn't understand about humans. When someone drew a line and told them they couldn't cross it, humans had a tendency to erase that line entirely. The 30-day countdown had begun. Soon, the galaxy would learn what happened when you backed humans into a corner. The emergency session of the United Earth Assembly had been going for 6 hours. President Helen Murphy watched from the podium as representatives from every nation and colony argued about humanity's response to the Council's ultimatum. The great hall buzzed with angry voices in dozens of languages. "We cannot fight the entire galaxy," shouted Representative Chang from the Asian Federation. "This is madness. We must negotiate." "Negotiate what?" replied Senator Williams from the American colonies. "Our surrender? Our children's freedom? Some things are worth fighting for." Admiral Morrison sat in the military section, listening to the debates while reviewing intelligence reports on his tablet. Maria Santos had been busy. Her agents had uncovered disturbing information about the Council's past actions against other species. Dr. Lisa Carter leaned over to whisper to Morrison, "The public opinion polls are split right down the middle. 45% want to comply, 43% want to fight, 12% are undecided." Morrison nodded grimly. Fear was a powerful motivator. The average human civilian couldn't imagine their small fleet standing against the massive armadas of the Council. But Morrison had information they didn't. "Ladies and gentlemen," President Murphy called for order, "we have new intelligence that may change our perspective on this situation. Director Santos will brief us." Maria Santos stepped to the podium, her face serious. She activated the holographic display, showing star charts and classified documents. 3 years ago, we discovered what happened to the Tarkin species. The official Council report stated they were destroyed by a plague that wiped out their homeworld. We now know this was a lie. The Assembly grew quiet. The Tarkin had been known throughout the galaxy for their brilliant scientific innovations. Their disappearance had shocked everyone. The Tarkin had developed technology that threatened Council control. Faster-than-light communication that couldn't be monitored. Energy weapons more powerful than anything the elder races possessed. The Council couldn't allow this. Santos changed the display to show intercepted communications. "These are transmissions we've decoded from Council archives. The plague was artificially created and released by Council agents. 15 billion. Tarkin died to preserve the power structure. Gasps echoed through the assembly. Several representatives looked sick. The Brunari Military Confederacy suffered a similar fate 2 decades ago. Their homeworld sun went supernova unexpectedly. The council claimed it was a natural disaster. We now have evidence that it was artificially triggered. The chamber erupted in angry shouts. Morrison stood up, his voice cutting through the noise. The pattern is clear. Any species that grows too powerful or questions council authority is eliminated. We're next on their list. President Murphy regained control of the session. What are our military options, Admiral? Morrison activated his own display, showing the human fleet positions. Openly, we have 240 combat vessels against their estimated 12,000. However, we have capabilities they don't know about. Dr. Ben Rogers joined Morrison at the podium. The weapons researcher looked tired but excited. Project Prometheus has been our top-secret program for 3 years. We've developed weapons technology that could change the balance of power. The display showed sleek ship designs and weapon specifications that made the military representatives lean forward in their chairs. Quantum disruption torpedoes that can unmake matter at the molecular level. Gravitic shields that bend space around our ships. Fold space drives that let us appear anywhere instantly. The Council's technology is thousands of years old. Ours is brand new. General Alex Turner, the Ground Forces commander, added his assessment. Our intelligence network is also more extensive than they realize. Humans have been helping other species for decades. We've built relationships, installed equipment, gained access to their systems. Commander Miller's special operations teams have been preparing for this possibility. Commander Kate Miller stepped forward. Her team had spent years training for covert operations throughout Council space. They had posed as technicians, engineers, and aid workers while secretly gathering intelligence and planting monitoring devices. We have backdoors into 40% of Council infrastructure. Communications, defense networks, trade systems. When we activate them, their entire coordination network will collapse. The debate continued through the night, but the momentum was shifting. As more details of the Council's past crimes emerged, and as the extent of human preparedness became clear, the Assembly began to unite around a single conclusion. At dawn, President Murphy called for the final vote. The result was overwhelming. Humanity would reject the Council's ultimatum. But before the vote could be officially announced, an urgent message arrived from the colony of New Boston. Captain Sam Walsh of the Orbital Defense Platform appeared. On the main screen, his face panicked. Madam President, we have Council ships approaching the system. They're demanding immediate evacuation of all human civilians. They say they're here to enforce the ultimatum early. Morrison was already moving toward the communication center. How many ships, Captain? 37 vessels, sir. Mostly Zephyrian and Corvani. They're broadcasting surrender demands on all frequencies. The Assembly watched in horror as the feed switched to external cameras. The Council fleet was massive, their ships dark and threatening against the stars. New Boston was a peaceful farming colony with only minimal defenses. Captain Walsh, Morrison said carefully, what is the colony's response? The colonists are refusing to leave, sir. This is their home. They've lived here for 20 years. President, Murphy made the decision that would change everything. Captain Walsh informed the Council fleet that the colony is under the protection of the United Earth government. They will withdraw immediately. The Council commander's response came within minutes. High Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian fleet appeared on screen, his silver eyes cold and arrogant. President Murphy, your species has had adequate time to consider our generous terms. This colony will be evacuated as a demonstration of Council authority. You have 1 hour to comply. And if we refuse, then the colonists will be removed by force. The communication ended. Morrison was already issuing orders to his fleet commanders, but the nearest human ships were 8 hours away. New Boston was on its own. What happened next would be remembered. As the moment humanity's patience finally ended, the Council ships opened fire not on military targets but on civilian settlements, schools, hospitals, residential areas. The attack was designed to terrorize, to show that resistance was futile. 50,000 civilians died in the first hour. Men, women, children who had never fired a shot or threatened anyone. Their only crime was being human and refusing to abandon their homes. President Murphy's face was stone as she addressed the assembly one final time. The council has made their choice. They've shown us who they really are. Now we'll show them who we are. Admiral Morrison activated his command codes, sending encrypted signals to human ships across the galaxy. Project Prometheus was officially authorized. The erasure protocol was now in effect. The Council had crossed humanity's line. Now the humans would erase theirs. Admiral Morrison stood in the command center of Earth's military headquarters, watching displays that showed human fleet positions across the galaxy. The erasure protocol had been active for exactly 4 hours. In that time, the balance of galactic power had begun to shift in ways the Council could never have imagined. Captain Ryan Brooks commanded the First Strike Force, 3 ships equipped with the new quantum disruption weapons. They had folded space to arrive at New Boston just as the Council fleet was preparing to bombard more civilian targets. "Target the flagship," Brooks ordered his weapons officer, Lieutenant Amy Foster. Full quantum disruption spread. The USS Defiance fired its new torpedoes at the massive Zephyrian battleship. The weapons didn't explode like normal missiles. Instead, they created a field that began unmaking the enemy ship at the molecular level. Metal, energy shields, even the crew inside simply ceased to exist. There was no debris, no escape pods, no distress signals. The ship was there one moment and gone the next. The remaining Council ships tried to retreat, but human ships appeared around them using fold space technology. One by one, the entire fleet was erased from existence. Within 30 minutes, no trace remained of the 37 vessels that had murdered 50,000 civilians. But the New Boston strike was only the beginning. Commander Kate Miller had spent 3 years placing her agents throughout Council space. They had posed as helpful technicians, always ready to upgrade alien computer systems and repair communications equipment. The aliens had welcomed human expertise, never suspecting that every repair came with hidden modifications. Miller sat in her command bunker, watching status reports from her operatives across the galaxy. "Phoenix Team, report status." "Security codes uploaded to the Corvani Defense Network," came the reply. "Their automated platforms will recognize all human ships as friendly and all Council vessels as hostile." "Eagle Team, what's your situation?" "Communication. Satellites around the Zephyrian homeworld are now under our control. We can monitor all their transmissions and block any we choose." Similar reports came in from 17 different star systems. Council infrastructure was being turned against itself. Navigation beacons began providing false coordinates, leading ships into asteroid fields or directly into stars. Trade route security systems started attacking the very merchant vessels they were designed to protect. The most devastating attack came at the Nexus Prime Station, the Council's main headquarters. Chief Engineer Tony Russo had been working there for 2 years as part of the Human Technical Support Team. He knew every system, every backup, every emergency protocol. Russo stood in the station's main power core, watching the countdown on his tablet. "Control, this is Phoenix 1, beginning station shutdown sequence." The massive space station began to die section by section. Life support failed in the Council chambers just as the emergency session was starting. Artificial gravity fluctuated wildly, sending alien diplomats floating helplessly through the corridors. The station's own defense turrets began firing at docked Council ships, treating them as invasion threats. High Counselor Vextar tried to broadcast emergency orders to the Council fleets, but the communication systems were no longer under his control. Instead of his voice, every Council frequency carried the same message from Dr. Lisa Carter. "People of the galaxy, you have been lied to for centuries. The Council's elder races have committed genocide against any species that threatened their power. They destroyed the Tarkin. They murdered the Bronari. They just massacred 50,000 human civilians for refusing to abandon their homes." The broadcast continued with evidence of Council crimes, testimonies from survivors, and recordings of secret meetings where alien leaders discussed eliminating entire species. Carter's voice was calm but firm as she delivered humanity's demands. The Council's authority over the galaxy is hereby dissolved. All species deserve the right to govern themselves, to explore freely, to develop their technology without fear of genocide. We call for the formation of a new galactic union based on equality, not domination. The message ended with footage from New Boston showing Council ships firing on schools and hospitals, followed by images of those same ships simply vanishing under human fire. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. The Council's member species had always feared and respected the elder race's power. To see that power rendered completely useless against humans shattered their faith in the existing order. Captain Matt Johnson commanded the Deep Strike mission against the Corvani military stronghold at Battleground Station. The station was built inside an asteroid and considered the most heavily defended position in Council space. "Sir, their shields are at maximum strength," reported his tactical officer. "The station has over 2,000 weapon platforms." Johnson smiled grimly. "Activate the fold space penetration drive." The USS Vindication didn't try to break through the shields. Instead, it folded space around itself and emerged directly inside the station's docking bay. The Corvani had never encountered an enemy that could simply appear behind their defenses. The station's own weapons couldn't fire inward without destroying themselves. Johnson's crew disabled the command center while the ship's quantum torpedoes systematically erased the weapon platforms from the inside out. Similar tactics were being used across Council space. Human ships appeared in impossible locations, striking from directions that should have been protected, using technology that the elder races couldn't understand or counter. The Ethereal Collective tried to rally their forces for a counterattack, but found their communication networks compromised. Orders were being intercepted, changed, or simply blocked. Their fleet commanders received contradictory instructions that sent them to empty space while human forces struck their real targets. Admiral Morrison watched the tactical displays as reports came in from across the galaxy. In 6 hours, humanity had gone from being an insignificant threat to dismantling the Council's power structure piece by piece. "Sir," Maria Santos approached with the latest intelligence reports. "Council fleets are beginning to retreat from forward positions. Their client species are starting to question orders. Some are refusing to participate in military actions against us." Morrison nodded. The psychological warfare was working as well as the physical attacks. The Council's authority had always been based on the belief that they were unbeatable. That belief was crumbling with every ship that vanished under human fire. Dr. Ben Rogers joined them, his face showing a mixture of satisfaction and concern. "Admiral, the quantum weapons are performing beyond our expectations, but we need to be careful about escalation. If the Council feels completely cornered, they might resort to planet-killing weapons." "That's why we're not giving them time to organize," Morrison replied. "Vice Admiral Dan Clark's Deep Strike forces are already moving against their main fleet concentrations. By tomorrow, they won't have the ships left to threaten any planets." The reports continued throughout the night. Council defensive lines were collapsing as human forces appeared behind them using fold space drives. Alien commanders found their own weapons turning against them as hidden human programs activated. Communication networks that had connected the galaxy for millennia were now tools of human intelligence. The most symbolic victory came when Captain Sam Walsh, the defender of New Boston, led a human fleet to the Council's main naval base at Sovereign Point. The base had been built to dock 10,000 ships and was protected by artificial black holes that were supposed to trap any attacking fleet. Walsh's ships didn't try to fight through the defenses. They folded space to appear directly above the base, then used gravitational manipulation technology to turn the defensive black holes into weapons against the base itself. The supposedly impregnable fortress was consumed by its own defenses. Dawn broke over Earth. President Murphy addressed the planet and the galaxy. The Council's 70,000-year reign was ending after just one day of human retaliation. "The galaxy has seen what happens when peaceful people are pushed too far," she said. "The Council drew a line and told us we couldn't cross it. We didn't cross their line. We erased it completely." The message was clear to every species watching. The old order was dead. Humanity had rewritten the rules of galactic power in less than 24 hours. The question now was what would replace the Council's authority. Morrison knew the hardest part was still coming. Destroying the old system had been the easy part. Building something better would test humanity's true character. The Council's elder races had ruled the galaxy for 70,000 years. They had never faced an enemy that could make their fleets simply disappear. High Counselor Vextar stood in the emergency command center on the Zephyrian homeworld, watching tactical displays that showed human forces appearing everywhere at once. "How are they doing this?" demanded General Korvthak of the Corvani military. "Our sensors show nothing, then suddenly their ships are inside our defensive perimeters." Vextar's silver eyes were filled with something the Zephyrian had never experienced before: fear. "Their technology is beyond our understanding. Every engagement ends the same way. Our ships don't get destroyed, they simply cease to exist." The ethereal collective's representative, a being of pure energy called Mind Speaker Velnash, pulsed with agitation. "The human communications are spreading across the galaxy. Our client species are beginning to question our authority. Some are already declaring independence." The truth was even worse than they knew. Dr. Sarah Kim's psychological operations had been broadcasting intercepted Council communications for 3 days straight. The galaxy was learning about decades of manipulation, genocide, and oppression that the elder races had hidden behind claims of bringing order and stability. Vice Admiral Dan Clark commanded the human deep strike forces, 12 ships equipped with the most advanced technology humanity had ever built. His mission was to hunt down the main Council fleets before they could regroup for a coordinated attack. "Target identified," reported his intelligence officer. "Corvani 7th Fleet, 84 ships holding position in the Nexar system." Clark studied the tactical display. The Corvani fleet was arranged in a classic defensive formation, using the system's asteroid belt for cover. It was a strong position that would have been difficult to assault using conventional tactics. "Begin fold space approach," Clark ordered. "All ships, prepare quantum disruption spreads." The human ships didn't approach the asteroid belt from outside. They folded space to emerge directly in the center of the Corvani formation. The alien commanders had no time to react before their ships began vanishing in waves of quantum fire. Admiral Korvthak himself watched from his flagship as his fleet was systematically erased. He tried to broadcast surrender terms, but the human ships didn't acknowledge his communications. Within 20 minutes, 84 Corvani vessels had been reduced to empty space. Similar attacks were happening across the galaxy. The Zephyrian 3rd Fleet vanished while patrolling the trade routes near their homeworld. The ethereal collective's warforms were unmade by weapons that targeted their energy matrices directly. Every Council stronghold found itself defenseless against enemies that could appear anywhere without warning. Captain Matt Johnson led the assault on the Corvani homeworld's orbital defenses. The planet was protected by a ring of battle stations that had never been defeated in 3,000 years of warfare. Each station carried enough firepower to destroy entire fleets. "Sir, their defensive grid is fully operational," reported his tactical officer. 12 battle stations with overlapping fields of fire. Johnson activated the new gravitational manipulation systems that Dr. Rogers had developed. "Target the gravitational anchors holding the stations in orbit." The USS Vindication didn't attack the stations directly. Instead, it used focused gravity waves to destabilize their orbital positions. The massive battle stations began falling toward the planet's surface, their own weapons useless against an attack they couldn't understand. The psychological impact on the Corvani population was devastating. Their supposedly invincible defenses were being destroyed by forces they couldn't even detect. Panic spread through their cities as their leaders' promises of protection proved worthless. But the Council's most desperate move came when they tried to rally their client species for a final massive assault. The elder races called upon ancient treaties and obligations, demanding that every member world contribute ships to destroy humanity. The response shocked them. Species after species refused to participate. The Andromedans declared neutrality. The Centauri Republic withdrew from all Council agreements. Even races that had served the Council for millennia began questioning orders. Dr. Kim's broadcasts had revealed too much. The galaxy now knew that the Council had destroyed any species that became too independent or innovative. Fear of humanity was being replaced by fear of their own supposed protectors. The Zephyrian military made one last attempt to strike back. They assembled their remaining fleet around their homeworld's moon, using it as a fortress. 300 ships, the largest concentration of Council forces still in existence. Admiral Morrison himself took command of the strike force sent to deal with this threat. The USS Retribution and 5 escort ships folded space to appear directly above the lunar surface. "Admiral, they're trying to use the moon's mass to block our quantum weapons," reported Captain Sam Walsh. Morrison smiled grimly. "Then we'll move. The moon." The human ships activated their gravitational manipulation systems at full power. The moon began to shift in its orbit, moving away from the planet and carrying the Council fleet with it. The alien ships found themselves being dragged into deep space by forces beyond their control. "All ships fire quantum spreads," Morrison ordered. The entire Council fleet vanished in minutes. 300 ships that had ruled star systems for millennia were erased from existence by 6 human vessels. The ethereal collective tried one final, desperate gambit. They attempted to negotiate a ceasefire, offering to return humanity to its previous status in exchange for ending the war. Morrison's response was swift and public. He broadcast his reply across the galaxy for all species to hear. The Council had its chance for peace. They chose war when they murdered 50,000 civilians at New Boston. They chose genocide when they destroyed the Tarkin and Brenari. There will be no negotiation. There will be no return to the old system. The Council's authority over the galaxy is finished. The elder races realized they faced complete defeat. Their fleets were gone, their infrastructure was compromised, and their subject species were abandoning them. In desperation, they made one final decision. The surviving Council leadership began retreating to their ultimate stronghold, Omnicon, an artificial world built around a weaponized pulsar. It had taken them 10,000 years to construct and was designed to be the ultimate weapon of last resort. Omnicon could destroy entire star systems by directing its pulsar's energy into focused beams. If the Council was going to fall, they would take as much of the galaxy with them as possible. Morrison received intelligence about the retreat from Maria Santos. "Admiral, they're falling back to Omnicon. Our agents report they're activating the planet killer systems." "How long do we have?" 12 hours before the weapon is fully charged. They're targeting Earth first, then every human colony. Morrison gathered his commanders for the final battle. The Council had one last card to play, but humanity had saved their most advanced technology for this moment. Fleet Admiral Greg Patterson took overall command of the assault force. Every available human ship was being prepared for the attack on Omnicon. It would be the largest space battle in galactic history, and humanity's survival depended on winning it completely. The elder races had retreated to their ultimate weapon, believing it made them invincible. They were about to learn that humans had a different definition of impossible. The final battle was about to begin. Fleet Admiral Greg Patterson stood on the bridge of the USS New Horizon, watching the tactical display that showed Omnicon growing larger ahead of them. The artificial world was massive, built around a weaponized pulsar that could destroy entire star systems. It was the Council's ultimate weapon and their final refuge. "Sir, we're detecting massive energy buildup," reported the sensor officer. "The pulsar weapon will be ready to fire in 4 hours." Patterson nodded grimly. The Council had made their choice. Rather than surrender, they would try to take the galaxy down with them. Earth was their first target, followed by every human colony. Billions of lives hung in the balance. Admiral Morrison's voice came through the communication system from his flagship. "Greg, what's our situation?" 200 human ships against their planetary defenses. "The pulsar weapon is almost ready. We need to move fast." The human fleet had been assembled from every corner of their space. Every ship that could fight was here for the final battle. But Omnicon was protected by energy shields that had never been broken and defensive systems built over 10,000 years. Dr. Ben Rogers appeared on the tactical display from his research ship. "Admiral Patterson, I have the solution. We don't need to break through their defenses. We can turn their own weapon against them. Rogers explained his plan. The pulsar at Omnicon's center was held in place by massive gravitational generators. If those generators were destabilized, the pulsar would collapse into itself, creating a harmless white dwarf star instead of a planet-killing weapon. The problem is getting close enough, Rogers continued. We need to place gravitational disruptors directly on the planet's surface. Commander Kate Miller's voice joined the conference from her stealth ship. My teams can do it. We've been preparing for this possibility. Miller had trained for 3 years to infiltrate the most heavily defended locations in the galaxy. Omnicon would be her ultimate test. The battle began with the Council's remaining fleets trying to stop the human approach. 300 alien ships emerged from Omnicon's shadow, led by High Counselor Vextar himself in a massive Zephyrian dreadnought. All human ships, Vextar's voice echoed across the communication channels. You cannot stop what we have built. Omnicon will cleanse the galaxy of your disease. Captain Steve Parker commanded the USS Enterprise in the opening assault. His ship folded space to appear directly behind the enemy formation, quantum torpedoes already firing. The Zephyrian ships began vanishing one by one as human weapons tore them apart at the molecular level. But the Council forces fought desperately, knowing this was their last stand. They had nothing left to lose and used tactics that ignored their own safety. Damaged ships rammed human vessels. Commanders ordered their crews to overload their reactors rather than be captured. Patterson watched the space battle while Miller's infiltration teams approached the planet's surface. The stealth ships used fold space technology to slip past the defensive networks, but they still had to land and plant the gravitational disruptors manually. Phoenix team is on the surface, Miller reported. Beginning approach to Generator Station Alpha. Omnicon's surface was a nightmare of defensive systems. Automated turrets tracked movement across the artificial landscape. Energy barriers blocked access to critical systems. Guard towers housed the Council's most elite troops. Miller's teams moved like ghosts through the defenses. They had trained for years in infiltration and sabotage. Their equipment was designed to be invisible to Council sensors. One by one, they reached their targets and began placing the gravitational disruptors. In space, the battle raged on. Captain Matt Johnson's USS Vindication fought 3 Corvani battleships at once, using superior speed and maneuverability to stay ahead of their massive weapons. Human ships appeared and disappeared using fold space drives, striking from impossible angles. High Counselor Vexitar's dreadnought was the largest ship in the battle, protected by shields that had resisted attack for millennia. But Admiral Morrison had saved the most powerful weapons for this moment. Target the Zephyrian flagship, Morrison ordered. All ships, coordinate quantum lance strike. 6 human ships fired their most advanced weapons simultaneously. The quantum lances didn't just unmake matter like the torpedoes. They reached into the fundamental forces that held atoms together and simply turned them off. Vextar's ship didn't disappear gradually. It ceased to exist instantly, as if it had never been built. On Omnicon's surface, Miller's teams were running out of time. The pulsar weapon was charging faster than expected, drawing energy from the gravitational generators they were trying to sabotage. Admiral, we need more time, Miller called. The generators are too heavily shielded. We need to get inside the main control facility. The control facility was at Omnicon Center, directly above the pulsar itself. It was the most heavily defended location in the galaxy, protected by energy shields and guard systems that had never been tested. Patterson made a desperate decision. All ships, begin planetary bombardment. Target the shield generators around the control facility. The human fleet turned their weapons on Omnicon itself. Quantum torpedoes and gravitational disruptors struck the planet's surface, tearing apart defensive systems that had stood for millennia. But the shields around the control facility held firm. I'm going in myself, Miller announced. Her stealth ship folded space to appear directly inside the facility's outer defenses. She had minutes before the automated systems detected her. Miller fought her way through the facility's corridors, her team clearing guard posts and disabling security systems. The Council's elite troops were well-trained and desperate. but they had never faced human special forces equipped with the most advanced weapons in the galaxy. Finally, Miller reached the main control chamber. The massive room housed the gravitational generators that kept the pulsar stable. Ancient machinery hummed with power that could tear apart planets. Beginning gravitational disruption sequence, Miller reported. She began placing charges on the key control systems, her hands steady despite the energy fields crackling around her. The pulsar weapon was almost ready to fire. Energy readings showed it had enough power to destroy Earth and reach most human colonies. The Council's last act would be genocide on a scale never seen before. Miller activated the charges. The gravitational generators began to destabilize, their careful balance disrupted by human technology. The pulsar at Omnicon's heart started to collapse in on itself. All ships, emergency withdrawal, Patterson ordered. The planet is going critical. The human fleet folded space to retreat to safe distance as Omnicon began to tear itself apart. The pulsar weapon that was meant to destroy star systems instead became a brief new star, before collapsing into a harmless white dwarf. The artificial world that had taken 10,000 years to build was gone in minutes. With it, died the Council's last hope of maintaining their power. The surviving Council leadership faced a final choice: surrender for trial or exile beyond the galactic rim. Most chose exile, fleeing into dark space with their most loyal followers. The few who remained would face justice from the species they had oppressed. 6 months later, Ambassador Lynn Davis stood before the new Galactic Union Assembly. Representatives from hundreds of worlds had gathered to sign the founding charter of a democratic federation, where all species had equal voices. The old council believed that power meant the right to rule others, Davis said. We've learned that true power comes from helping others rule themselves. Captain Steve Parker's USS New Horizon led the first joint species exploration mission beyond the galactic rim. Human, Andromedans, former council species, and newly liberated worlds worked together as equals, seeking new frontiers instead of new conquests. On New Boston, now rebuilt and thriving, President Murphy dedicated a memorial to the 50,000 civilians whose deaths had started the war. Their sacrifice had ended 70,000 years of oppression and opened the galaxy to a new age of freedom. The Council drew a line and told us we couldn't cross it, Murphy said to the assembled representatives of 100 worlds. We didn't cross their line. We erased it completely, and in its place we've built something better. The galaxy was free. The age of human equality had begun.